Hello, everybody. I hope you're all having a lovely day as I'm joining you from my office setup right now. As I know you guys got to kind of check that out as well with Contested. But today we're going to be talking on Prestinni in Florida's future, Warzone's impact on the Call of Duty esports space, as well as we'll be joined by Hastr0 later on to talk on the online league. All that and more ahead on Off the Break. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Off the Break, presented by Jack the Box. I'm Landon Lando Sanders, live from, like I said, my home office. Unfortunately, not at the beautiful Frontier Communications studio, but given the current worldly circumstances, this is where we currently are. But it's nice. I've had the opportunity to kind of be at home a little bit, kind of enjoying the home setup. But I'll tell you what, man, I was taking a look at my phone the other day, take a look at the old camera roll, and saw the beautiful Frontier Communications studio. I tell you what, wish I was there, but hey, you know what? We're currently on hold a little bit, but it may not be different, however, to those who are listening to us today. But a very special thank you to the folks that are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, etc. We welcome you as well to Off the Break. All right, let's go and get into things, right? To talk firstly about what has kind of been going on, at least right now, in terms of Call of Duty esports. One of the biggest subjects going on is we'll talk about other stuff, but this one first. Prestinni being benched by the Florida Mutineers. Now, a lot of this kind of stems from the Reddit post that was actually made by Prestinni himself in response to a post pretty much asking why Prestinni hasn't returned and started discriminating yet with Florida. And this exact post, which I'll go ahead and quote for you, he said, "Not my decision anymore to be benched, so that is not the case. But thank you." So it seems as if, in his opinion, or rather what is currently going on behind the scenes, is that Prestinni, as of this moment, it is not his decision anymore to be benched, meaning that previously, whenever he missed CDL LA for mental health reasons, that was his choice, right? That was something that he made on his own terms. That was something that he kind of came up with. That was his kind of idea for things. Despite, right, after finishing top 2 at CDL Atlanta under the Florida Mutineers, he decided to bench himself. So what's the cause of this, right? That's the biggest thing I think a lot of people are kind of wondering, including myself. What is the cause then for Prestinni to be benched, right? And I think one thing in particular that kind of allows to this was for who his replacement was, right? Pharaoh was a very, very easy and good fit, obviously depending on the placement, but still yet, Pharaoh worked and kind of came into this roster and looked pretty good. It almost was as if they had teamed previously in terms of himself and the Florida Mutineers. He was obviously motivated to be on this team, Pharaoh was. He embraced the roster. Whenever you watched Pharaoh and the Mutineers after map wins or losses, he was very much kind of there to engage with his teammates, to let them know, certain things that kind of went on throughout the map. In post-game interviews, he was clear when the blame should have been on him. Hey, he was like, hey, sometimes this particular situation, it was my fault. I have to be better. I have to be playing at a certain level if we want to succeed. He was hungry. He looked committed and dedicated to this team. And to go along with that as well, Havoc in an interview post one of their, I think it was one of their particular series in Los Angeles, pretty much said it was crazy how easy of a fit he was for this team. And I think one thing in particular for me that's also pretty interesting is that Prestinni, I don't think, wants to be a part of Florida. I really don't. I don't think that Prestinni wants to be a mutineer. I don't think he wants to be in Florida right now. I'm not saying that he doesn't want to be in the CDL. Let me make that very, very clear. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm not saying that Prestinni does not want to be in the CDL anymore. I'm not talking on that whatsoever. I think, though, if he wanted to be in the starting lineup, I think he would right now. I think if Prestinni wanted to be in the Florida Mutineer starting lineup, he would by now. And I think in some cases, you have to think about this. Why would Florida not want to try that out again? I mean, I was someone who went on the record and said, you know what, Florida, I thought the placement was great. I give you props for placing the way that you did. In Atlanta, but coming into Los Angeles, didn't really have a ton of high hopes. Even with Prestinni still at the time in the starting lineup, expectations weren't super high. Regardless, though, if you're Florida, you just came off of a second place finish, right? You took down some top caliber teams. You looked fantastic. Most importantly, you reverse swept the Chicago Huntsmen, right? That was unbelievable. So if you are Florida in this moment, in this particular moment in time, why would you not want to start him, right? That makes no sense. Why would you not want to start Prestinni at this moment? And I realize Prestinni's focus may be on other things at the moment, but I believe that if he truly wanted to be on this team, be a starter for this roster, he would be. Or there would be social signs of frustration being shown. I'm talking about Twitter, I'm talking about Reddit, I'm talking about YouTube, Twitch, whatever it may be. There would be signs of arguments. There would be signs of struggle saying, you know what? This isn't the right move, guys. I should be in the starting lineup. I should be on the main roster right now. And I haven't really seen that. It's kind of been more relaxed, like, hey, not in the starting lineup. And that may be because of outside things. And I'm not trying to act as if those outside things may not be functioning into what we have right now. But I believe the reason we didn't know publicly what was going on with Pharaoh post LA was because Florida probably didn't know themselves what was occurring. And to be honest, I'm assuming now that since Pharaoh's scrimming with them, he's officially signed to the roster. I don't even know a lot of the details that were going on behind the scenes in terms of, was he brought in because of a mental health issue? Well, what about substitutes? One of them is a player who doesn't actually play the game. The other one is the coach. What happens then, right? Is Pharaoh allowed to be brought in despite substitutes still being on the roster? How does that work? Was he here for an event? Was he officially signed? Still don't know. But I believe that Florida Mutineers also weren't too sure what was going to happen with their team as well, given the circumstances that they were given. But in Atlanta, I think, and this is for me, I believe that Prestinni proved what he wanted, right? Whenever he came to this team in particular, whenever, for those who remember the offseason, what was kind of going on at the time, where there was a lot of drama taking place, there was a lot of discussions occurring in terms of, why is Prestinni not being added to a team, considering the fact that he was somebody who would just come off a world championship, right? It's crazy because all the other guys were starting positions pretty easily. We talk about the Atlanta Phase, we're talking about the Dallas Empire, the Chicago Huntsmen. I mean, you think about it, United players are all going to teams in which it was a pretty easy, for the most part, acquisition in terms of guys that were getting out of the rosters. There were announcements coming out already, but Prestinni was not, right? He was somebody who was kind of one of the last, and that's something that the Florida Mutineers have phrased themselves. This was someone who was kind of brought in last moment. And I believe that in Atlanta, Prestinni proved everything that he wanted to get across this year, which is that he didn't need Arcides to win. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying that he won the entire event because obviously we all know the story. They don't. They face off against the Atlanta Phase, and, granted, it's a more of a grimmer story post that. But I think he proved not just to the world, but most importantly to himself, that he had what it took to get the job done. And I believe this, and I think there's a lot of people who are kind of, when it comes down to this particular discussion, Prestinni and Arcides, they want to be together, right? They want to play alongside each other again. There's no denying that. I feel at this point, based off the interviews that we've heard, based off of the post-game interview between Florida and Chicago, the hype leading into that particular matchup as well, when they're talking about family, they're talking about the history that they've had. If you go back and watch the Eavesdrop podcast with Arcides, goes into full detail about his relationship with his brother, the way that they have come up in competitive Call of Duty, the way that that has progressed. It is no surprise that they want to play alongside each other. And I think from, like I said, their family, both Prestinni and Arcides, they don't want to go through that again. I don't think that they want to face off against each other again. And I don't personally have a brother, but I do have a sibling. And the last thing that I would want to do personally is to take them down and to allow for them to see negative results, right? Obviously, I want to win. And I think for these particular guys, they're trying to weigh whether or not it is worth winning or being on the same team as each other. Obviously, you want both, right? To win with your brother would be the absolute best thing that you could ever have happen. But I think with this particular circumstance, Prestinni proved what he wanted. He finally proved what he had been trying to do for years, ever since the talk had been kind of established, especially throughout Black Ops 4 with the Bees. He's carrying the team. Arcides is carrying the team. Now Simp comes through. His role gets changed. All of this kind of going on. I think he finally managed to prove what he wanted. And whenever he faces off against his brother, as hard as it could have been to face off against your twin brother and to take him down the way that they did. I think that was the last thing that he wanted to do. But also at the same time, the primary focus that he has had his eyes on since the CDL began, or rather since the offseason progressed, when he knew he wasn't going to be playing with RCDs again. And I know I talked about the Eavesdrop podcast, but if you get to, if you haven't already listened to the RCDs interview, I highly suggest that you do, because it is an excellent listen. It was a great opportunity to kind of learn more about the background of RCDs, kind of his come up, how did he kind of manage to get into the competitive scene, things like that. It was a great listen, I'll put it that way. But in that interview, whenever RCDs was on it, and one point in the interview, he basically says, I think Preston and I are going to regret teaming with each other. And that was interesting. That's a pretty interesting quote to say. And I don't necessarily think that it's going to be based off of maybe a placement problem, because I think RCDs is very confident in the Chicago Huntsman. I don't think there's really any doubting that. But that for me is kind of more of a personal thing. Like, I think he and I, and we're talking about RCD's perspective here, he and I are going to regret teaming with each other. And you can feel free to take that however you'd like. But for me, that is talking on a personal basis. He and I are going to regret not teaming with one another. That's a hard one to put. And I think Hex was even caught off guard whenever I watched the podcast back. It was kind of like, wait, you're gonna regret not playing with Prestinni? Like, so all of these things for me are cycling into what is going to happen in the future, which I'll talk about. But speaking of the future, does this hurt the Florida Mutineers, right? And I think that it does, and I think that it doesn't. On one hand, you have a full team of guys who, at least in my opinion, want to be there and are solely focused on this team, not taking anything away from Prestinni. Obviously, he has to take care of himself. That is the primary factor. That is something that he needed to do. But I think at this moment, on one hand, you do have a full roster of guys who I think want to be in the Florida Mutineers. I think Prestinni, his mind is a little bit off. I don't think he necessarily wants to be a Mutineer, at least as of this moment, based on the lack of I guess you could say kind of social putback that we've yet to see. But on one hand, like I said, you have a fully kind of focused group. And on the other, you may not have the greatest lineup that you could have on paper, because there was the conversation of, hey, you know what? There's 3 spots. There's 4 guys. Who's going to get him, right? You have Havoc, you have Mox, you have Prestinni, and now you have Pharaoh. Who's getting brought in? Who's getting taken out? Because I think there was a few moments, and as I kind of watched throughout Atlanta, or rather Los Angeles, as I was kind of watching Pharaoh's play, in my mind, things started to kind of cycle through. Is he good enough to be on this team? Does he fit well with this team? Granted, he's not playing the particular role that maybe he's supposed to be there for. And at the same time, you also have to think about Pharaoh's not really playing the role that he actually plays for this team, right? This is by no means Pharaoh's main position by being brought into Florida, right? He's kind of more of a flex. He likes to run that AR a majority of the time. And that's something that he didn't really have the opportunity to do when it came down to 100 Thieves at the start of the year last year. We know how that roster ended up going, at least in the early stages, things like that. So for me, as I was watching progressively throughout Los Angeles, in my mind, I was saying, okay, hey, you know what? If he starts to play well, who's off the team, right? If Prestinni comes back, who's off the team? And I know the main conversation, the instant name that pops into my head, along with many others, is Mox right now. And I think that people are getting very down on Mox right now, and for the wrong reasons, right? This man isn't meant to run an SMG. This is not the role that Mox was brought on this particular roster to run, right? Many flexes that are currently existing in the CDL, they didn't come into Modern Warfare thinking, yeah, can't wait to run an MP5. No, that's not the way they thought. They thought, hey, I'm going to have an M4 in my hands. I'm going to be running alongside, maybe playing a little bit slower than my other AR player, right? That was not at all expected. So for me, a lot of flexes, like your Zeros, like your Rateds, and here as well, like your Moxes, guys who are traditional AR players but have to run the SMG, there's a trend, right? We're starting to see a trend of these guys not playing their best. And it's not a surprise. It is not a surprise whatsoever, because they're not meant to run this role. And teams need to be careful for the future about getting rid of your flexes, because what happens if there happens to be a patch What happens if the M4 gets stronger? What at the least happens if the MP5 starts to get out of the meta? Who do you go toward then? Right? What if it does become a much slower paced game in which the SMGs aren't preferred as much? In which case you're adding an AR to the map more often than not. Maybe, like I said, major changes could happen in which these players, in terms of AR players, are more valued. Well, if you're New York, hey, all right, well, we just lost accuracy. And not an accuracy, but you lost 0. If you're thinking about, the London Royal Ravens position, all right, we lost rated. And here, potentially, if you are Florida, we lost Mox, right? You're kind of putting yourself and you're locking yourself into a one meta type team, which you have to be careful about because of the future of Call of Duty and the way that we know that it can work. Also considering Pharaoh can run kind of a flex position, so maybe you kind of have that input there, but still yet a lot of teams I think aren't realizing that their flex players are having maybe not as great of stats for obvious reasons, for reasons that they cannot control, because he fully intended, along with other players, on running an AR this year as he has for many years previously. And I think the lack of engagement and pace on his particular side of things is more of a team issue rather than a specific player issue. I really do. I think the way that the Florida Mutineers like to play, it is not a style that really kind of focuses on Mox in particular. It is a style that he kind of has to adapt to, and that's not something that he's familiar with. And granted, you could say, well, he has to adapt. At the same time, that is also on management and the pace of the game that you have to evaluate and look out for. But like I said, end of the day, I don't think this is where Prestinni wants to be. I don't. I think there would be much more backlash. I think that we would be seeing at least some sort of media come out kind of talking in specific about the Mutineers, but I don't think this is where Prestinni wants to be. I think he wants to be with Arstes. I think he wants to be on that particular team. I think at the very least, he just does not want to be on the Florida roster for whatever reason. You can kind of argue depending from time to time. But it wouldn't surprise me, honestly. It would not surprise me if next season, we're talking about Prestinni and Arstes being on the same team. Whether one's a starter, whether one's a sub, who knows? But that's just kind of where my head is, at least as of right now. All right, let's move forward. Let's talk about Warzone a little bit, right? This is obviously a major conversation as I've been kind of scrolling through Twitter. Obviously, a lot more free time now that I'm at home. But YouTube, Twitch, pretty much all the socials, and I've just been seeing Warzone constantly, as I'm sure that you have as well. Kind of throughout your quarantine process, Warzone has been the game that I've personally been playing a lot, and I've almost kind of identified Modern Warfare as Warzone. Like I'm like, hey, you guys want to hop on Warzone rather than Modern Warfare? It's just kind of a common term. But the conversation that I want to bring up is Warzone hurting competitive Call of Duty, right? The world is actually playing Warzone right now. If you haven't already seen the stats, in just 10 days, Warzone has reached over 30 million players worldwide. That's crazy. In 10 days, reached over 30 million players worldwide. And the thing is that the game hasn't left the top of Twitch. The game hasn't left the top games on streaming platforms. This game is taking over in the midst of the opportunity that it's kind of presented for itself, which is the fact that everyone's at home now due to COVID-19. Everybody's at home. Everyone's playing games. And the reason why I believe this game is having so much success is not just because of that, but also because it's a great game, right? It is the go-to battle royale, and it looks as well that it can last for a while. I do follow a few different battle royale analysts and commentators and just kind of people who kind of exist in that scene, and they're like, there's some depth with this game, right? There could be a future when it comes down to Warzone. Now, I don't know about competitive. I don't know about all of those things, but just in general, from a strictly player base, the numbers, they're interesting, they're intriguing, and it's something to be conscious about. But from a Call of Duty competitive standpoint, is it something to worry about? Right? The question remains, not only could Warzone be hurting competitive Call of Duty, but rather could be ours in COD hurt it for the future. And I realize, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, I realize that I stem more toward the competitive side in terms of Call of Duty, which is a lower percent of the COD audience. But I hope Blackout, I hope Warzone especially puts the realization of Call of Duty that this needs to take precedence over single player. And you have to be careful, because if Activision Blizzard start focusing more on battle royales, they focus more on content that could take away from competitive in the future, because by many opinions, competitive was not the main focus this season in Modern Warfare. Now, I'm partial to relying on what I believe to be true, which is pretty much the idea that Infinity Ward had franchising thrown in their lap. I think that, at least in my particular opinion, the way that franchising came about, which was pretty much last second from a lot of different people's perspectives, I think that Infinity Ward was not expecting this whatsoever. I think from a competitive standpoint, we talked about obviously a number of different things when it comes down to just competitive playlists, etc. They weren't prepared for this. I mean, they weren't. It doesn't. It's like there have been so many different situations of which you could look at how things were done last second, or how things weren't done properly, or how efficiently, whatever you want to kind of label it as. There were a lot of different situations where things have changed last minute, and so I don't believe that Infinity Ward necessarily. I don't know if this title should be an accurate indicator for the future of Call of Duty franchising whatsoever, right? Because I don't think that Infinity Ward, the developer of Modern Warfare, were prepared to have their focus change in some aspects to competitive, right? I believe with Treyarch right around the corner, and for a second go of it with franchising now at the helm, BRs will take the focus away from the Call of Duty League. Like I said, from the way that I look at Treyarch as a developer, I think that they have the kind of notes taken on what has existed for this year. I think they've gone to the drawing board. I think they've looked at what has kind of taken place throughout this competitive season, even obviously from a public standpoint, and they realize the circumstances. They realize, okay, these are the do's and these are the don'ts. These are the things that we want to make sure that we accomplish. These are the things that we need to take away. And that, kind of is an unfortunate thing for competitive in the inaugural season of the CDL, with obviously COVID-19, but also at the same time, arguably a game developer not being super prepared. But with how quick this year was done, I don't believe this to be a full accurate representation of what we can expect for the future. Format even decided last second, and obviously, for the better changes of things. It didn't allow for teams, to be at events. When we talk about it, the format was decided literally maybe a few weeks before the first event took place. And I'm glad that it did, but that is just one of the many indicators that goes to show that this year was kind of a fast one, right? And this was a curveball thrown at Infinity Ward. They weren't ready, and they weren't 100% kind of all there, I think, in a majority of different circumstances. That's the way that I look at it. That's the way that I'm kind of looking, at least as of right now, in the current circumstances that we're in, because like I said, I don't think this should be a year that we look at it and look back and say, okay, that's what we can expect, because I think Warzone actually really isn't that bad, right? And I know that currently COVID-19, in terms of the way that, the championship conversation is going to work for the future, it will allow, honestly, for this season of the CDL to be considered more of a trial run. Warzone, with the hype that it's getting, obviously the CDL right now in its current kind of unfortunate state, all things considered, it is unfortunate. But with the fastness of if you will, of this year, the way that things have translated, now obviously with the online league beginning to come a thing, I believe that this year will kind of be looked upon as like, oh yeah, the first year. Oh yeah, that 1 year, the championship conversation, it was the first year. It was the inaugural season, big deal. It doesn't count as a regular major LAN of years previous, which could be a good thing or a bad thing for Call of Duty historians out there. Probably a little bit more of a negative thing, like myself. I'm going to be pulling my hair out trying to figure out, okay, does this championship count as a whole lot? Does this championship not count as a whole lot? Do online major championships count? There's a lot of conversations to obviously happen later on. But I want to talk about a few positives personally as we kind of wind down here a little bit. On our current second subject, a few positives, right, for me in terms of Warzone, the way that it affects the competitive Call of Duty scene, because I've seen a few people talk about it, kind of express their worries for how this kind of progression is going to take place, because Warzone in some ways does help highlight the CDL. And as minuscule as it may be, imagine if the CDL was up and running as it was intended to. Right? Imagine the stream numbers. Imagine the hype that would be going right now if you had Warzone to watch at the same time as you had competitive Call of Duty to watch. And I realize maybe people could argue and say, oh, well, the numbers, they're taking away, from the general audience. They're taking away, from what could be the numbers that the CDL events could get. And obviously it's a different mode, but Call of Duty reaching incredible numbers on vast streaming platforms nonetheless is a plus, right? It's a plus regardless. The name Modern Warfare, Call of Duty, is seeing those numbers. It's being talked about consistently. It's being streamed by some of the biggest personalities in the world right now. And the name Call of Duty is continuing to generate day after day after day. I don't know. For me, I look at this as a plus more than anything. I think it's keeping the game, and I think it's keeping the title relevant. And even in these big tournaments, and we've obviously seen them be brought out. I think there was one playing a little bit earlier today. Pro players are involved in these, right? Pro players are being involved in multiple tournaments. And while you have to be careful about the ability for multiplayer lobbies to be replaced, I think that this nonetheless is a positive thing. You have to be careful about the ability, and you have to be worried about, in some cases, multiplayer lobbies to be replaced by a more popular mode in battle royales. But nonetheless, I think this is a positive thing. I think this is a good thing for competitive Call of Duty to be aware of. And nobody knows exactly as well how long the battle royale trend is going to last. Like I said, who knows how long this is going to take place for, and what competitive Call of Duty's future is at this current moment. Because single player could eventually get kind of thrown out the door for something like these extra modes, kind of like what Warzone provides. And I don't know if that's going to take place. But while not a perfect advertisement for the CDL, Warzone for me will be here to stay in terms of battle royales for the future. Battle royales, I think, are here to stay and are an indirect way of keeping Call of Duty Modern Warfare in the conversation and in the relevant eye of the community. And as we get ready to bring in Hastr0 here for a quick interview, for me, it's kind of an interesting subject. It is an interesting subject, and I'd really like to hear kind of your guys' opinions on this one as well. Kind of about what your thoughts are in terms of the way that this kind of mode works. Is it a good thing? Is it a negative thing? Do you think this can help the competitive Call of Duty scene? We'd love to obviously kind of hear your thoughts on how that goes, because I'm excited to see the future of it. I think a lot of people are enjoying Warzone as of this moment, and I look forward to seeing Call of Duty's history, or rather future, with it when it comes down to the mode. But looks as if we do make way for the owner and the CEO of Envy Dallas, Fuel Dallas Empire, previous coach, player, commentator. He's held pretty much every role possible when it comes to esports. We welcome in Hastr0. How's morale these days, Mike? I think we might have Mike muted. I don't know. Can I hear him? Am I messed up on that? I don't know. It might be me. Chat, let me know. Am I messed up on that? That could be me. Waiting to hear from.
How about now? Is that better?
There we go. We're good.
Okay. That was on me.
There we go. No worries. But how's morale going these days, Mike? Everything good?
Yeah, I mean, these days everybody's morale is, in limbo, because the whole world, we just want to figure out what's going on, and it's just going to take some time. But hope everybody out there watching and their families are very safe.
Absolutely. Have you got a chance to leave the house at all?
I've had plenty of chances, but I've stayed home. So
is that right?
Yeah, for the most part, I've been home.
Tell me, what's the coolest thing you have in your home office? And any Call of Duty memorabilia at all?
Oh man, cool things. I'm actually not in my office right now, but this room is definitely the coolest room in the house.
Is that right? I can't actually tell what that is.
Here, it's a media room actually. Here, I'll flip the camera around.
Oh, gotcha.
There you go.
Very cool.
Little movie theater.
How big is that screen?
120 inches.
Wow. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little movie theater.
I like
this
that.
Is like,
That's awesome.
I'm a diehard gamer, man. I'm going to keep it real.
Do you get a chance to play games on that?
I can play games right here where I'm sitting. I have a really good gaming PC hooked up right here, and I can use the big screen as a second monitor if I wanted, or a third.
Very cool. I think you're pretty well set up, to be honest.
I'm doing okay.
I think you're pretty well prepared. Yeah, I think you're pretty okay when it comes down to.
But I've been gardening, dude. I haven't even been in here. This is the only reason that I have to come in this place. Yeah, we watched a family movie maybe a week ago in here, but I've been vegetable gardening, like no joke. So yeah,
Interesting.
might as well just grow some vegetables in a time like this. Lots of uncertainty. We'll see what happens.
I see.
Grow our own vegetables.
I see someone in chat saying full dad mode.
Oh, dude, I'm done. Yeah, I'm full dad mode, man.
I love that.
Yeah, there will be a moment here in about a week where I probably start streaming again, and I'll start playing some Warzone. We got to do like a daddy Hastr0 challenge. See if I can still like maintain my skill level across multiple games. We'll
That's
see
great.
how well I can do. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I look forward to watching those streams for sure. But let's go and transfer the conversation a little bit to kind of the current CDL circumstances as of right now. Tell me a little bit. Where were you when you learned the CDL was transferring the league to online? Was that a conversation that you were in? Was that something that you kind of heard about? Where were you when you learned that was taking place?
Every team works pretty closely with the league to coordinate something like this. I mean, we as an ownership, our ownership group, we're having conversations amongst other ownership groups too, and coordinating with the league and trying to figure out, how we take this new kind of situation that we're faced with on. And it's a very coordinated effort, in terms of ownership groups of various teams having contact with Activision Blizzard Esports.
Now, I'm not sure how much you can share with us, obviously, at this time, but is there anything that you can say about the online league's future and maybe the possible format that we could expect?
Not too many details. I'll leave that up to the league to announce and for them to talk about. But what I will say is that, back when I was competing, this was kind of normal. And yeah, I mean, LAN environment is definitely way more ideal for gameplay and so on and so forth. But the online is still pretty solid, and we always competed online. I mean, we played all of our pro circuit ladders in 2008 and 2009 were all completely online, and then we had one national championship each year. In 2010 we played a ton online. Going through the history, it's back then online games were pretty accepted, as normal. And sure, there are lots of issues that can arise out of playing online, but come on, let's all be real. Like, for the sake of competitive Call of Duty, let's keep this shit alive right now and have some fun with it. It's the best possible case that we have to deal with, and the best possible scenario is for us to keep playing and play it online. And so anybody who whines and complains about it, you're a bitch, just straight up. Like, just quit your complaining, and let's keep having some good games on the internet. And everybody's out there is gonna say, oh, easy for the Empire to say. Well, you know what, we had years of competitive Call of Duty action on the internet where we would get booted offline, and things that would happen to our team and so on. So it doesn't matter, like, at the end of the day, just embrace it. It's the best we can do, and let's have fun with it.
So is it fair to say you think the LAN to online thing is in some ways overblown, or maybe the right word would be kind of over dramatified, possibly?
I mean, look, pro players in Call of Duty are pretty whiny in general. Like, and look, I'm one of them, man. I get salty on Twitter sometimes. You guys see me complaining sometimes. I say some things that I have to take back and just apologize for every now and then. But it's everybody complains a little bit. Get it out of our system. Just get it out. Like, I would prefer you do it some other way instead of dogging the game that you love and play every day. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. You can complain a little bit about certain things. There definitely will be moments that aren't ideal, but that's what makes competitive Call of Duty fun. I feel like, some of our scene is kind of hinging on a little bit of the drama and, kind of the crazy, wacky things that happen in competitive Call of Duty. It's what makes it just a really great community to be a part of. And, it's great to be a fan of some of these players and teams and get to watch their moments of glory, and it's equally fun to watch moments of meltdown. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think a lot of people at the very least are interested to see exactly how the online league kind of translates. And kind of one of those aspects, I know that you were obviously someone who was pretty heavily involved with kind of the restructuring idea of what was kind of the previous CDL league format, from kind of regular league matches to tournament play. Was the format something that you were kind of worried about before the online league conversations started to kind of come into the picture?
No, I felt like we were like really on the right path, to creating a really cool product, with the format of the events, having 8 teams duke it out in kind of 2 group stages into a championship bracket. Like, I thought that was actually a pretty neat format, and it was pretty exciting to play in. The last one in London or in LA that we won, that was cool, and the one in London was neat to watch too. And Atlanta had a good event. Like, I don't know, I was getting into it, and really, like, our team was really getting into it too. I mean, we're into it, and but we're already focused on like the next step now. I mean, we're already past that, and the format was great, I thought, and hopefully the fans enjoyed it. Maybe we can make it better in some ways. Maybe trying to figure out a way next year where we can have all 12 teams. But it's kind of difficult when you have, we had kind of pivoted the model a little bit already. So, maybe next year we can incorporate, if we're still at 12 teams, 2 groups of 6 at the events and figure it out somehow that way. But I mean, so far, I think the format, the changes were headed in the right direction. I was feeling really good about it.
Now, kind of from an owner's perspective, and obviously a prior pro player's perspective, are there any precautions that you would like to see addressed? Obviously, from a public perspective, we don't know about these things that maybe could already be addressed. But kind of from your perspective, the way that you sit, are you kind of in some ways interested to see the way that the league kind of handles what could be DDoS attacks? I know a lot of people kind of brought up the idea of dedicated servers, et cetera, things like that.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's part of the show, right? Like, it's going to be part of the show. I mean, it just has to be, and hopefully we can go in the right direction. I mean, hopefully during this time, everybody wants to, see people be successful and have something that makes people happy.
Absolutely. Now, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Is there any frustration whatsoever at all about the memes being made around the Dallas Empire and online? I know the Dallas Empire is with the router and things like that, but is there any frustration considering you guys just won LA and now all these memes are kind of filling up Reddit?
No, it's all funny now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all fun now, and we're leaning into it now. I mean, it's fun, right? Like, we were always having fun before that too. But we had to go out and prove it, at least, like, get close to proving it. We still have a little left to prove, for sure. And we're coming for those teams, but, like, we're having fun with it. It's funny to us, it is what it is. We're really good online, but we just showed that we can be really good on land too. And we also showed nothing but progress, man. That's what I love about our team, and I'm so happy about, is that we've shown progress every single match we've played, just about. Like, you can just see visible progress in the games, and that our team's just starting to click. And we made some changes to, the positions that the players are playing, and seeing that click. And, we're committed to winning, man. Like, we're going to be competitive no matter what. And we kind of beat our chests a little bit too much at the beginning of the season, but it made us just work even harder. So, I feel good.
Now, to set the record straight for the folks at home a little bit, what are the true, and I'm saying the true NVHQ internet speeds? What are those officially, you think?
Oh man, I don't know if I'd be giving up too much.
I've seen a few people. I think you posted the
no. Let's just put it this way:
and stuff.
We expect that most teams and players with fiber internet connections will have the similar speeds as us. We didn't go too crazy with it.
So there you go, Call of Duty competitive scene.
Let me actually tell you. I'll tell you guys. You put it on Reddit, right? You can put this on Reddit. For us to upgrade our internet from a 1 gig by 1 gig fiber connection in our HQ, it would have cost us about $300,000 to go to a 10 by 10 gig connection. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on the wiring of our new HQ and a bunch of stuff. But when they said, if you want to go 1 gig to 10 gig, it's going to cost you, nearly $300,000.
Goodness.
Yeah, I couldn't do it, man. Couldn't pull the trigger on that.
I don't blame you on that one, to be honest.
Yeah. So we have a 1 by 1, but I think we have I can't give up too much more info than that.
Right.
We have multiple lines in that HQ.
Well, there you go. Like I said, Call of Duty competitive scene. Your questions have been answered, and possibly a little bit maybe kind of maybe confirmed a little bit. But
Yeah.
it must have hurt. I know, kind of transferring from the online to LAN conversation, it must have hurt a little bit, right? At the very least, to be kind of the next event up right after the LAN league cancellation with COVID-19. But what can you kind of tell fans about what would have been done at CDL Dallas?
Uh, well, we would have had a really cool venue. I'll say that Toyota Music Factory, where we
Yeah.
were supposed to hold our event, is just a really brand new kind of music concert, festival kind of venue. I don't know, can't really call it a hall, but it's very cool. They have these big garage doors that can open up into a big grass hill that turns it into a big amphitheater. It seats about 4,500 people indoors, and you can put another 2,000 people on the grassy hill behind it. Um, and it was just going to look cool. They have really, really big video boards in there already. We were going to bring in, a bit of a show in there, and the tickets were starting to sell really well. So very disappointing. We were looking forward to a really big crowd in Dallas.
Who came up with the name Empire? Is that something you can credit to yourself?
Yeah, actually, it was Graham Henry, our VP of Vice President of Team Operations. Graham and I have been friends since our freshman year in college, and he's helped me run the team for many years. And yeah, Graham we had tons of names that were coming out. I mean, we went through 100 different names I at least looked at, and we picked a few and we started running with a couple, but Graham was ultimately the one that had that first initial idea in an email to me. So have to give credit where credit is due.
Do you have any other ones that were kind of close?
Hold on, I think my headset just gave out.
Oh,
nope, I can't hear you anymore, Lando.
Oh no.
No, now you're good.
We're good now?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Did you get to hear the question, I hope?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we had some other ones, but I don't want to talk too much about them. I'll talk about one.
Sure.
Because I think we registered it. It was the Dallas Republic, which was not as good. I don't think, but the state of Texas used to be its own republic.
Right.
It was its own little republic, for a little while before they annexed and joined in the Union, the United States. So a little bit of history, behind the state of Texas there.
Yeah, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking a little bit more about history, kind of one of my favorite things about the Empire name is obviously the logo that's associated with it. And on topic with history is the Envy, right? The N and the V that exists in the crown. Is that something that you came up with? Was that something to credit to someone else again, or who kind of came up with that design?
I mean, so it's a team effort, but really the person that you have to credit there is our kind of producer, videographer, editor for the Empire, which is Joe Fries. So we had like a massive, group discussion many times, actually, many group discussions, many iterations with a design studio that the league, works with us on. And but ultimately what ended up happening was we had a very long Discord call with some of the best designers and kind of minds within our company, and many logos were getting passed around, many ideas and thought boards and lots of discussion. And then Joe, took the whole concept of me wanting the Envy incorporated into the crown and created that. And when he dropped it into the Discord chat to all of us, we were all on the call, and everybody was just like, "Yep, that's the one." So it worked out really well. We all knew it when we saw it, I think.
Have you gotten a chance to play some Warzone at all?
Not really, man. So no, I haven't.
Has it been the gardening?
I've been gardening in my spare time.
It's weird. Go. I'm excited.
Yeah. I don't really know how I got into that so much, but yeah, I've been on my back patio, getting a little garden going. It's actually a pretty big garden, but yeah, I'm kind of feeling being outdoors a little bit around my house and taking it easy. But I did promise the guys that I would fire up. I ordered a bunch of streaming equipment and got some stuff ready. If we're gonna stay at home for a while, then I want to be playing games with my friends and my teammates. So I'll probably start streaming a little bit, and maybe I'll do a little kind of dip into the content in the garden too. I'll take my webcam out to.
I'm ready for it.
Yeah, you ready for that? Okay.
I'm ready for a YouTube series. I'm
Yeah,
at the very
we'll
least
prune
ready
cucumber
for
and tomato plants together.
there you go. I'm at the very least just ready for kind of pictures, progress pictures over time. I think that could
Okay.
be
We'll
interesting.
start there in our
All right.
gardening relationship, Lando.
Okay, it could turn into something. It could turn into something great. Who knows? You know, things have come from crazier circumstances. And final question, and I want to, and this is something that I've actually always wanted to kind of ask you in terms of the way that kind of Envy has developed as a brand. Obviously, one of, if not the most historical Call of Duty esports brand ever. When you think of Call of Duty and the brand Envy or Envious previously, is there a specific, and we're talking about Call of Duty here, but is there a specific player that you think of first when you think of the brand Envy, the way that that meant to Call of Duty? Is there a player that you think of first whenever those two things come into mind?
Oh, that's a really tough one. One player?
Yeah.
Nah, there's no way.
No way.
There's no way.
A group of players then.
Envy was made up of a lot of players. I mean, we've had so many players play for Envy, man, and some that I love, and
Sure.
I mean, there's just too many. Like, they're just too many. I think one day we will have kind of like a, Ring of Honor type thing with Envy, Hall of Fame. And there will be plenty of guys that make it into that, I think. But yeah, there are a few. There are a few, man. I actually like almost every single player that's coming through our organization. I've had, at least in Call of Duty over the years, I've had some pretty good relationships with them, mostly in the early years, and kind of the last few years it's been a little bit more difficult for me to spend a lot of time with our teams. But
Sure.
Before that, I mean, I was basically living with most of the guys in our team house, or I'd live, a couple miles away and go visit them pretty often, almost every day. So it's tough. Sorry, I can't be more specific.
Hey, it's all right. Like I said, we'll figure it out maybe in the future. Like you said, maybe some type of related content to figure out maybe who those people kind of were or over time. But I want to take one quick question from the chat, which comes from Aditya. I think I said that correctly. If not, my apologies. But the question is, what's Mike's advice on starting a business and growing it? Obviously, much like you did with Envy, Dallas Empire, Dallas Fuel, etc.
Yeah, I just looked in the chat. Yeah, honestly, you really just have to love what you do every day, man. Do not start a business that you think is just a good idea to make money. I mean, do something that you actually truly just love and try to create a business around it. And most people don't just have one thing that they love in their life. I mean, you can have multiple passions, but pick one that is probably the best for you to go into business with. And that way you're always protected, knowing that you have to get up and grind and work, that you're not going to get burnt out as easily. You're not going to be as much, let's say, overloaded and overworked and not feel confident in what you're doing every day. If you love what you're doing every day, then it doesn't really feel like work.
There you go. That's Hastr0, owner and CEO of Envy, Dallas Fuel, Dallas Empire. Mike, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Oh, thank you guys, and hope you guys give Lando a lot of love. He's working hard, so give some love to the channel and share Lando's stuff, because dude's the man and going to be covering COD in the best way possible. So hope to come back and talk to you soon.
Appreciate it. Absolutely. I think we'll have a lot of stuff to talk about probably in the coming days, coming weeks for sure.
Okay, well, I'll sign off. Thanks for having me, guys.
Sounds good. Appreciate it again, Mike. And at the same time, a massive thank you to everybody for tuning in as well. As I know, we got a chance to cover a lot, right? We got to cover Prestinni and Florida's future with one another. We also talked about Warzone and competitive Call of Duty, whether it is a positive, if in the future it possibly could become a negative with multiplayer no longer kind of being at the main focus. And as well, of course, we just ended out a great interview talking with Hastr0, the owner of Envy, Dallas Fuel, Dallas Empire. Obviously a great conversation. Always great to talk to Stro anytime we get the chance to, and hopefully in the future we'll get the opportunity to again. With, like I said, a lot of things kind of floating out kind of in the conversation right now, especially when it comes to competitive Call of Duty. And hopefully with the online league announcements, we'll have some more stuff to cover as well. I'm sure probably within the next few days. I'm currently kind of expecting something to take place, but Thank you to all of our listeners on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, etc. Like Max said, massive thank you to everybody who is tuning in, not just live, but also kind of post as well. I want to give a huge shout out to production and everybody who allowed for contested and off the break to take place for today, and obviously for the future as well. For those who have kind of been following a few of the reports, obviously in the state of Texas, things have kind of happened very rapidly. I'll just put it lightly. And so there has needed to be a very quick turnaround. So a massive thank you to production, everybody involved for today. And for all of you, stay safe, stay healthy. And we'll see you guys Friday at 6 p.m. at Central Time, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can feel free to watch Contested at 5 p.m. Central Time just before this. But yeah, thanks so much to everybody for tuning in. This has been Off the Break, and I hope that you all enjoy your week.